Are we announcing the I am a pineapple, or are they going to?
They will.
Okay, cool.
I will go get Tony.
All right, everyone. Welcome to morning.
I'm gonna go this time. She'll probably get kissed if you said I'll let her run around. She doesn't want to go.
She likes pop squad. Yeah, I'm
The baby's leaving the building. You can all say curse words. All right. All you brave people that are braving the cold tonight, grab one more beer. Have a seat. Get you guys. Don't mind if I do. Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it. It is too damn cold, so I put my money in summer. I don't know which one you guys prefer, but I know what I would like. We have a super cool lineup for you. I'll tell you about that in just a second, but first I want to say thank you to the organizers. So if you don't know me, I'm Tony, and the rest of my crew is Greg, Patty, Dean, there it is, and then Jen is listening in online, but whenever you turn in stuff to be a speaker, she's the one that handles all of the hard work. She's the workhorse, to be honest. Also, very, very big thank you to Galvanize. They are the only place that's been able to host us where we haven't outgrown them. So thank you for having us here. And Buck, are you going to take a few minutes to tell us about your new program? Woohoo!
Thank you, and welcome to everyone. We love seeing you come back. We love seeing people come for the first time to these meetings. And I just wanted to talk to you for a minute about Galvanize, who we are and what we do. So we do have students that do our classroom programming, and we're actually doing a big switch. We just acquired Hack Reactor, who's really, really awesome in the industry. They're super great. And so we're doing an immersive software engineering program. We also have a brand new data analytics course. So if you want to know more about that, you can look on this flyer. I'll have that later at the desk. And I also have some cards for Allie, who's going to be helping with admissions. So that's going to teach SQL, advanced Excel, and Tableau skills. And we are also a membership. We're a co-working space, so you can also find out more about that from us. Anyone wearing a Galvanize shirt will be at the desk later this evening. And we host events like this, so we're super happy that you're part of our community, and thanks for coming.
Forgot to mention that that new program is part-time, which I think is a game changer for a lot of people. Awesome. Just, pimp it out. Sorry. Another thank you is for everybody that has given us donations for beer. You guys keep the beer flowing. We've been getting a lot more through Meetup, and thank you so much. It helps us, have things a little better than PBR and all that good stuff. Something better than PBR in Colorado? No way. All right, so our lineup tonight is a little bit different. We do have two speakers, so I'm gonna let them go a little bit longer than normal. Claire Sims is gonna be talking about data visualizations and telling us the changing way educators discuss and use data. So she's basically going to be like warming our hearts tonight, like all this good stuff. And then Joe Toscano is going to scare the crap out of us. He wrote a book called Automating Humanity, and I have heard his talk, and I know that he will do a great job letting us know all about it. People, this is the first time. I know I see a lot of on your face. Sweet. Take a picture of this and get connected with us. There's a lot more going on with Analyze Boulder than our meetings once a month. Absolutely. Some pictures tonight, leave your comments on Twitter, but also chat with us on Slack and share the jobs that you've got going on, that your companies are hiring for, or any cool articles that you come across. Or if you want to be a speaker coming up, we are changing things just a little bit. We are going to be looking for more people's stories about how they got into data. It's not like we popped out just being math nerds and all that. We came to be where we are in our careers, and there's a story behind that. We want to hear it. So you do not have to be working on a project to be one of our speakers in 2019. All right, this is my favorite part of the evening. Anybody got any events coming up that they have to share with us because it's going to be awesome?
So, hello, my name is Joe. I'm with GoCode Colorado, which is an open data competition run by the Secretary of State's office that challenges participants to solve business challenges and provide business insights using public data. We're excited to be back for our 6th year in 2019 with a new format and a new structure. So we'll be coming again to talk more in January and February, but basically we're introducing an analytics track. So instead of the standalone product track, to really look at the data insights, the visualization, the tools, and say how can you use that data to add value to businesses that already exist, to go through that activity, and to also consolidate a lot of the mentorship and engagement into 2 really intense sort of challenge days. And so still pretty early, we're going to have a kickoff event at the end of February, likely February 20th, and then challenge day March 23rd. So it's just a really intense Saturday. It's free to participate, great excitement, great engagement, meet some new people, have a good time. And as Boulder, Tony's been a great supporter in the past, and so we're happy to be back for 2019. So just putting that bug in your ear, gocode.colorado.gov for more information. Yeah.
For how many people here, this is the first time they've heard of GoCode? Sweet. It's basically an apps challenge using public data. And in the past, winning teams have gotten $15,000. So similar to this? Nice. Nice. Any other announcements? People looking for collaborators? Other meetups that are almost as cool as ours?
Yeah, my name is Rob Spoke, and let's see, I'm looking for collaborators on a project that involves cryptocurrency and art. So, collision course.
Awesome.
And so I'm just happy to talk to anyone about this project, which is actually a platform for entry into very stratified art markets. Thanks.
Awesome. Get him a beer after the event. Whose companies are hiring? What jobs are available right now? Don't you love how we make the pregnant woman walk around the microphone?
I work for One Hot Labs. We're a startup based out of Manhattan. I work remotely here in Boulder. Here's my start to my job claim. I was immediately enthralled by the combination of a massive data set, the flexibility, the openness, and agile nature of a startup, and easy access to subject matter experts. Just to be clear, we automate the coding of electronic medical health records with procedure and ICD-10 disease codes. So while most startups focus on gathering manually labeled data, we were given 33 million medical reports by our parent company who hires and manages lots of different medical coders. So we have multiple projects in the space. It's a really cool, wonderful job. We're about 4 people right now, and open up a hiring remote place here in Boulder.
Awesome.
Let's go.
One Hot Labs. Our website's still work in progress. Just heads up.
So finding them, that's probably your best bet.
Any other jobs?
What kind of employees are you looking for? You want specific?
We have our founders interested in like more specific job titles, but data scientists in general. Our postings right now for machine learning engineering data engineering, but general data science practitioners, people learning data.
Awesome.
I work for WordPress and Jetpack. First, I'm a marketing data analyst on SQL skills, and let the rest you can learn, and then also data engineers. Don't ask me the details about that.
You remember that leadership person I said wasn't here, but she's a total badass? That's Jen. I work at Glue, and we are right down the street. We have a people analytics platform, and we are looking to hire another data scientist, so feel free to come chat with me if you want to apply. All right. You guys ready to let the fun begin?
Well, I have one announcement.
Oh,
Because in case anybody else didn't notice, we have a password now on Galvanized Guest. So if you were wondering what that was, it's all lowercase, be a pineapple. No spaces or anything here, just be a pineapple, lowercase.
What about a pineapple would I want?
Okay, so there's
Of course they know.
So I can't actually explain it. I mean, it's one of their new fun things they galvanize, and they want to embody the spirit of pineapples, which is, of course, like traditionally hospitality and openness and friendliness. So be a pineapple. Well, this might even comes when guests stay too long.
Yeah, there you go. So Rob is not the only one that has some art and data stuff going on. This event is being put on by Julia Richmond from City of Boulder. Okay, not county, City of Boulder. It's at the library. It's this Saturday or this Friday, excuse me, and it should be awesome. Julia has spoken with us before, and she's amazing. The work that she's doing with the City of Boulder and making data sets public and open are super rock star. So love to see you guys support them. And I just found out today that Analyze Boulder is going to be co-hosting an event with Wendell's Women in Machine Learning and Data Science. It is open to everyone, even though it says women. If you guys don't know Janelle Shane, she's hilarious. She's spoken here before, and she basically runs these convolutional neural nets and tries to come up with brand new recipes, different poems, different songs, whatever, and of course they're ridiculous and super fun. So spend more than 5 minutes with her on the 19th. And then Go Code. Joe is here, so you already heard all about this. We'll keep you posted as time goes on. But without further ado, we'll get the party started with Claire's.
All right. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm going to talk about building student success at Boulder Valley School District. So I'm Claire Sims. My title is Senior Data Visualization Designer for the district. So to start out, who here has a child who's a Boulder Valley School student? All right, awesome. So a little background on BVSD. We are comprised of 56 schools. We're spread out over 500 square miles. We serve over 30,000 students, and we have 4,000 plus employees. In terms of data visualization at the district, our project there is called BizLab. That's kind of the branding that we put onto it. But we do use Tableau Desktop and Server. That's what all of our visualization work is based on. And so BizLab is where our educators go to access dashboards of their students' data. We are reaching out to other pieces of data in the organization, but right now we primarily do serve principals, district leadership, teachers' dashboards of their own students' data. So with this primary audience of teachers and educators, our big question around our purpose is how can we use data to better support kids? But in my going on 3 years now working on this project, I found out that the secret hidden question is actually how do we get non-data people to care about and use data? So, when I got this job, I was super excited to dig into the data, totally ready to nerd out. But I quickly realized that a lot of our educators are maybe not on the same page with me there. So an example of that is I had a training with a group of teachers one time, and I asked them at the beginning, what do you think about when you think of data? And somebody yelled out, boring. And that kind of caught me right here. But fair enough. Our teachers are not here to be working with data. They want to be working with kids. But I think our job with this project is really to show them how they can use that data to better serve, better connect with their students. So what I thought I would do today is share a couple of tips that I've learned over time that I think have helped us use data visualization to answer these questions. So the first tip is to bring disparate data together. So what I'm showing here is kind of a high-level overview of what we're doing with this bigger project. So, like I'm sure a lot of other organizations have, we have data sources spread out in a whole bunch of different systems. And so the foundation of this project at the district is to first get all this information into our data warehouse. I'm going to shout out David Tomaszek is here. He is our data warehouse designer, doing the awesome work on this side of the project. So we take that data, it's now in a nice organized place, and we use that to create our data visualizations in Tableau, and then serve them up to our educators. My second tip is to involve end users from the start in the process of designing data visualizations. So I'm going to show a few pictures from an example of this process that we went through. So when we were first designing dashboards for our teachers, one of the first things we did was to pull together a focus group of teachers to really better understand what are their needs around data, how they want to be interacting with data. And so the first question was just asking these teachers, what are different sources of data that you use from your students or that you would like to be able to have? And they quickly filled up a whiteboard with different ideas. So these teachers, there's information out there that they're in some cases using or struggling to get to. And so this really opened my eyes that a big thing we have to do is make it easier for our teachers to get to this information about their students. Another thing that I asked them to do was to sketch out their ideal dashboard. And so this is just really useful when working with the audience to have them kind of step into the role of a designer and better understand what are their needs and expectations around data. So all of that was very helpful for me. Here's some of my messy drawings of starting to sketch out what I wanted these dashboards to look like to help meet these teachers' needs and how they could interact with the data. And so that helped me design a series of different dashboards for teachers. I'm just showing quickly here kind of the landing page of how they get to that information. But a few of the lessons learned from this focus group were, make it really visually engaging and design dashboards that are really focused on a specific purpose of what a teacher would want to be doing with the data. So for example, on one of their dashboards, they can get a high-level overview of their students. There's another one we call the playground, where they can go in and actually pick out different measures to mix and match and compare to each other. So they have a lot of control of how they're looking at it. And then my third tip is to make data interactive and visually engaging. And I think this is really the superpower of data visualization. So what I'm showing here is another one of the teacher dashboards that I built. And so this we call our early warning system. It's showing different potential risk factors that might be going on with the student. So for example, For attendance, are they showing up in the red for having low attendance? Do they have D's or F's? That might be a risk factor. But the power here is that teachers can go in and they can interact with this information. So at a high level, they can see how many of their students, maybe are having poor attendance and need some support there. But they can change things around, they can drill down, they can look for patterns, and importantly, they can look at specific students and really see for an individual student, what might be challenges going on for them right now that teacher can help address. And the other thing here is that users are really empowered to own and explore and take action with their data. And so really the upshot of all of this is that we have given our educators another tool in the tool belt to serve students. So I always like to share this quote. This is the heartwarming part. We had a anonymous survey that we gave to our principals about this project. And so one of our principals told us, we're making better decisions for the kids based on the data. So that's really what it's all about. Our educators are now more empowered to use that student data more effectively. And we're all working together towards student success. Thank you.
And the teachers don't have to learn SQL.
Yes, that would not happen.
What questions do we have for Claire?
I'm just wondering, do you have any examples of how you have successes or wins with a specific use case, a teacher who's uncovered some nugget? I'm not really sure. But an example of how this has made education better.
Yeah, I think the early warning system is a nice example. So we've had some data savvy educators who have been talking a lot about attendance. Like they really drill on, attendance is a huge thing that's gonna tell us which kids are at risk. And so I'm thinking of one person in particular, talking with her and looking at this dashboard where she can look at both, attendance, but also these other factors. I think what's really interesting is that, sure, there's some kids that she are on her radar that she kind of knows are struggling a little bit more, but we were surfacing kids that she really was not aware of. And so now she knows to go and reach out to that student and see what's going on because they're at risk of not succeeding.
All right, thank you for presenting. I wanted to know about decision making, decision analysis. Teachers probably instinctively do decision analysis, but some things like the effectiveness of the GSS type programs, other protocols, and all these things, teachers have to follow this in their day.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting. I don't think we are quite there yet, but I think having this tool and having our data warehouse opens that up. That's a great point, though. I think there's a lot of I feel that this is working, or I feel strongly about this program or this initiative in education. And so there's a lot of room to be looking more at the data and asking those questions.
Oh, girl! Sorry.
I was just curious, because now you have a quantitative set of information, what's the parents' perception? Because it's no longer just, this is what a teacher thinks, there is actually something.
Yeah, I'm actually not so much in that world of knowing, but I do know that our teachers, so there's another thing I didn't show here, where we have kind of an individual dashboard for a student. And I know that our teachers are in some cases printing those out and sharing those with parents to have those discussions. I think it's just another piece of information. We can't undervalue the relationships that teachers build with students. That still is super important and what they know about that child as an individual. But I think it's just another realm of information that they can bring in to help inform those conversations.
So I worked as an educator, and so we moved up that list to all the resources. empathizing. And so I'm curious which sources did you end up kind of prioritizing and like pulling from?
Yeah, so prioritizing those is a huge effort in of itself because it feels like everything is a priority. So what we did to start with was looking at district-wide initiatives or efforts or like assessments that we work with, for example. Anything that is a requirement district-wide or a requirement of the state, we definitely started with those because that's kind of, we have to have our eyes on that information. And we are trying to keep building over time and reach more of those pieces of data because we're not there yet. There's quite a bit still to build in.
So for the older population of students, like high school, is there a tool or something that you may point out such that it can help them make their own decisions since they're older, using data for, say, for example, what college and which child can be through and such? I heard kind of secondhand that there might be some sort of a resource from BVSD that kind of, with anonymous type of information saying, with this, say one particular high school, this many students, this kind of colleges, and this kind of PAs, and that. Is there any kind of like that around, or is it something that you might want to do or about them?
Yeah, I think we would definitely be interested in that. We do have, I don't know as much about it, I think we do have a system coming online, that's probably what you had heard about, that is more specifically like a tool for counselors working with high school students for that kind of thing. But I think that would be a great project. I've seen there's another Colorado district that has kind of taken on one side of that project of looking at the college acceptance rates and statistics of test scores, like average test scores per college, and did something kind of like that with this tool. We haven't done it yet, but I think that would be a great next step to reach our high school students.
Okay, so approaching this from kind of a similar angle, organization where data science knowledge is not really. So I think you're right. I actually appreciate the presentation because you consulted and you made it clear to them how it benefits them. So you mentioned that you guys sort of set up focus groups or some great word you speak to the teachers and say, hey, if you use this, how would you use this? How did you pick that group? What went into your thought process when you thought, okay, these are the people who want to ask these questions to?
So partly they kind of make themselves pretty obvious when you start to, go out to schools and talk about data. You see some people light up a little bit more. So we definitely have those data people that we connected with pretty early in the project. To some extent, it was self-selecting. We put out, I think we put out a general call for volunteers. We also connected with principals, so the leadership in those buildings to kind of pick out people that might be good thought partners on the work as well.
How do your users vary from like K through 12? Like, are there, imagine you're across the spectrum there. The second question, I totally understand what this isn't come across as criticism, that you're disempowering your users with data, but is there something going on with y'all that they might not be aware of in terms of like longitudinal studies, like tracking a student over time in a way that a teacher will teach someone for a year, but then they're handed over to someone else? I just had like a friend in high school who had, I can't remember what was wrong, but some kind of disease that caused like depression, like this terrible grade drop, and if the teacher had that expectation of this person being that student because they came on day one, but if they look, okay, we've tracked this person over time, and this person has been an A student, something must be going on in their life, medically, mental health, etc. So I hope that doesn't go across as criticism. I'm just like, I'm interested in that too. You guys are aggregating that data and the public aren't.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting question, and something we are thinking about. So yeah, our audience is pre-K-12, so we're making this available to all of our teachers, principals as well, but also counselors, mental health advocates, all of these people that work in the district. And I actually think a big strength of this approach is that we are kind of, not that we didn't have the historical record for a student before, but it's being organized in the data warehouse now. We have a way to show that. So, you know, if you get a kid coming in, we keep all of that relevant historical data there. So when you go look up that kid now in this system, you can see that trend over time. You can see, you know, how they do last year and earlier. I do think educators, you know, are trying to be cognizant of that as well, but before it was more like you had to call up their teacher last year and be like, hey, what was going on? But yeah, this offers another tool to look at that over time perspective for students.
One more question. Awesome. Thank you so much, Claire. What I love so much about that is it gives us a perspective of how the designer fits in and actually uses some of the data that we end up using and analyzing and actually getting out into the world. We'll be exploring that in January. But now we get to talk about a whole other side of things with, I'm just making you out to be this bad guy, aren't I? It's not Halloween or something. I'll let him do the talking. Joe, just go.
Yeah, so this is, if any of you have seen me around here before, I kind of float around, do talks. It's been my life for the last 18 months. This is going to be a brief version that covers a lot of stuff I haven't really talked about in most of my talks before, because I think we have a great audience here to have these kind of conversations, to discuss some really deeper issues of what's going on in big tech. Background on me, I was a consultant for Google up until June last year. I left for ethical reasons, not just because of Google, but within the industry at large. I've written a book called Automating Humanity, and since then have been traveling, like I said, for the last 18 months, giving some of these talks, raising awareness about what's going on the inside and how we can consider what we need to do. So I'm going to start off, my talk is called What Does Data Do? And then feel free to badger me with questions afterwards, whatever you hear and you don't like or want to give feedback on. So I'm going to start with Amazon. We all seen Amazon. We all know Amazon's a very powerful company. But I'm just going to walk through some things that have been happening at Amazon that maybe you've heard about, maybe you haven't thought about this way, maybe stuff you haven't heard about. So we all saw Amazon purchase Whole Foods. Yeah, baseline. Did you think about the fact that Amazon used data to analyze the market share, who their demographics are, and purchase a company that happens to reside in the exact area where their Alexa users live? So they, instead of like a traditional business that had to build a foundation and drive revenue, they said, no, we already have billions of dollars invested. We're just going to purchase 460 locations in the perfect demographic area, create a funnel that just feedback loops to us. And instead of using Instacart or Grubhub or whatever those delivery services is, now you can just order straight through Amazon, right? They're now creating Amazon Go stores, I'm sure you've seen, right? If you haven't seen these, the intention of these is to cut out the middleman, to get rid of as many employees as necessary. And what will that do to local retailers like King Soopers or others? It's either going to come out of their bottom line or it's going to come out of their employees' pocketbooks. Either way, they won't be able to keep up. Amazon has also created their own logistics company. They purchased Boeing 737s, cargo ships, delivery fleets, all of these. And if you haven't heard, they've also patented the infrastructure for smart roadways. Bought the doorbell Ring, and now they have an end-to-end loop where they can just automatically deliver things. Right. What they're working on is building the perfect automated subscription to the basic needs of our lives. Yeah, they're doing it pretty well. So well that they are driving demand in the workforce in ways that we've never seen before, to where they can demand things for their headquarters that other businesses simply can't. Right? If you didn't read the contract, here's a small detail you might have missed in the recent H2 quarters. Amazon has Virginia on hold for 20 years, up until 2042, but yet they're so powerful they can cancel that contract within 5 days' notice, right? What else do they do? Well, we've all seen Amazon Basics, yeah? That has to do with data, right? They have a marketplace that runs what is now a global economy. They can see who's distributing what, where it's going, how popular it's getting, what's trending up, how they produce it. And instead of taking the risk, like a business who says, we're going to create a product and throw it out there and see what people think, they can just make Amazon Basics and post it as the first listing, because not only do they have all the data on what you're doing, they also have the ability to control what pops up first, which just happens to be their goods, right? That's just basics, right? That's not like anything deeper than, the basics of Amazon's data, but there's things going on inside that we'll never know until it comes out publicly, leaks or something, right? How do they do it? Scale an endless bank account, knowledge of a global marketplace that they own, right? You used to be able to, like, when you competed with people, you might like go into their shop and like nose around or like try to guess. They just know everything. They know everything. They can use that to also control the platform, which is now a global marketplace. So that's Amazon. But how about Facebook? This one, Facebook, we've seen the problems recently. They're kind of on fire, right? We all kind of know that Facebook's in trouble. But let me walk you through some things and see what you think. In 2014, Facebook ran a study where they intentionally manipulated people's timelines to see like if they could persuade them to be more positive or negative based on the feeds that they get. They would remove certain content to make it more negative or add content to make it more positive based on their testings. This was on 800,000 people who were unaware and did not consent to this testing. But it did happen. And on the preface of the research paper, if you go download it, Cornell comes out with a preface that basically says, yeah, there were Cornell students involved in this. It doesn't meet our International Review Board standards, and we don't believe in what happened, but it did happen, and it was legal because you signed the terms of services. Okay? Same year, they run another study to see how well they know people based on their likes. They found that within 10 likes, they know you as well as your coworkers. Within 150, they know you better than your friends and family. And within 300, they know you better than your spouse. So the question I ask everyone is, how many things have you liked on Facebook since you signed up? Yeah? Yeah. More recently, they released emotions, right? The reactions, right? 2016. This is now what could be considered the largest quantitative analysis of qualitative emotions in human history. Right? They are not just using that to see what you like. They're starting to target people, including teens, in their times and moments of desperation. That's a fact. It has come out. You can look up all those over a year and a half ago. They've also recently released Messenger for Kids, and this is positioned to parents as a, be a good parent. Get your kid on the platform so you can protect them from the other strange messenger services. By the way, we can't get kids on our platform because it's illegal, but if you consent to it, we can collect their data. Yeah, wink, wink, right? The big tobacco companies did this with Joe Camel, where they tried to, they saturated their adult marketplace and then tried to get into the minds of kids. But how long will we allow big tech to do this to our children, right, without some kind of something happening? Right? The last point here, Google, and I think for maybe not for this crowd, because I'm sure you're much more aware than a lot of people. I speak from all ranges, from the technical executives down to like parents and students in youth classrooms. Google tends to be, in my audiences, Google tends to be like the relaxed moment past the Facebook, right? Like Google, we're okay, because this is what we generally think of with Google, right? Search bar, that's it. But Google has almost 500 products. They have search, which is the largest search engine in the world. Does anybody know the second largest search engine in the world? Bing, where else? YouTube, there we go. Also Google, yeah? Second largest search engine in the world. Gmail, decades of your most intimate contact, network connections, relationships. Android is 86% of operating systems worldwide. Maps, 2+ billion people tracked every single second of the day. And those are 5 products. They have almost 500, right? They run the APIs that run your business. And if they turn those off, they shut down industries. That's Google. So you need to know what's going on in the world today? Probably go to Google, right? Need to know the acronym that your boss just told you that you don't know about? Probably go to Google, right? Or how about this one? Have a question or too embarrassed to ask anyone else? You went to Google. Yeah. They know so much about you, it's crazy. Now, do they target you? Yeah, that's probably their job. But in 2010, Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, actually came out and said, we know so much, we don't even need you to type anymore. That was in 2010. We're now a decade later, right? To the point where they are now suggesting the way that you speak in your emails. And how do they do that? They read your emails. Yeah, and you consented to it, right? Okay. Now, some of these services are great. And I will tell you, like in my book, I do go through the benefits of all these technologies. But there's a certain point where we have to draw the line, right? Where does privacy come in and where does it end? So we all know Google. We feel trust in Google generally. But we have to realize that having all this data puts them in a very powerful position to shape our perceptions of the world. People think, that's a lunatic's perspective or it's some kind of conspiracy theory. But if you read Larry Page and Sergey Brin's research paper, their PhD thesis from 1998, there's multiple quotes, and I'll just pull one out here to show you, which is essentially, if you read past the ellipsis, for example, a search engine could add a factor to search results from a friendly company and subtract a factor from results from competitors. AKA, a search engine company could theoretically skew the algorithm in our favor, what's best for business, and nobody would ever notice because of the scale of the internet, right? Now, this is when they were PhD students and they weren't making money off ads. This was their honest evaluation of the threats of a large-scale search engine, right? There's also quotes along the lines, if you ever create a search engine based on ads, it will inherently be corrupt. There's many things you might want to look up in that PhD thesis paper that now explains their current behavior where they're being investigated for antitrust, right? Because they are skewing search results. I connected the family who brought the search results case up and won, gave me a 64-page court document about what has happened in the past 12 years. What you'll find is that Google's been doing this for a long time. It is what's best for their business. Something like this, right? It's incredible to have that tool, to be able to go to Google and find all the flights in the world. But what does that do? It cuts out all the other competitors. They're using the same data points in a conglomerate format. So it's destruction of competition. Google's also using this data, or was, to help build facial recognition AI for drones. That got stopped because employees picketed and bolted against it. Recently, Google was found to have a bug that exposed information up to 500,000 users of Google+. That's why it got shut down, if you heard about it recently. If you didn't hear about it, you didn't read into it, what happened was that actually that leak had been happening for a couple of years, and they found out about it this March, but they didn't release it to the public because Facebook was going through the Cambridge Analytica scandal, and that would be bad for PR to get related with that. So there was no legal requirement to announce it, so they held on to it until September. And they told it, right? More recently, they've been in trouble, on fire right now, because it's found out that they are creating a censored search engine for China, control their internet over there, right? These are some of the reasons why I left, right? Data is powerful, and I believe overwhelmingly technology has benefited our world. But we also have to realize we're entering a world where investment capital is so focused on the quarterly revenue, it's gone beyond just doing good and doing something better for society. And it is a pure business model, right? And a lot of these are best for business, but is it best for society? Those are the questions we need to ask as data engineers, as machine learning people. These are all in your hands, right? These are the steps you have to think about, the ethics, things that we don't maybe talk about until it's too late. Maybe move fast and break things. It's time to shut that down. So that's the end of my presentation. Hope you enjoyed it. Last question.
First questions or comments?
I'm a little bit ignorant about European laws related to using your data in automated algorithms, but where does that fit into this? Do you see that as a step forward? Do you see actual effects of it on European citizens?
Yeah.
Other appetites too, et cetera.
Talking about the GDPR?
Yes, that's the acronym.
So I read the whole thing because I probably should know about it if I'm talking about this stuff. I can't give you all the exact details. It's literally a 100-page legal document. It's a pain in the ass, but some high-level stuff. I mean, you're allowing people to erase their data. You're giving them access to the stuff. It's beginning to be controlled, et cetera, et cetera. There's documentation outlining how they need to have all this access. That's great, and I think it's a good step. But also, in my opinion, and I think this is the opinion of a lot of researchers, if you look into the actual science behind it, what researchers has found is that actually giving people access to those tools just makes them more prone to give more sensitive information because they feel like they have control. So if they don't actually understand how the data flows or what's possible, it's more like putting a nutrition label on a Snickers bar, right? Like, it's great to have there, but people are still going to eat the Snickers bar and they're going to get fat, right? So I think the GDPR is a good step. I think that it opens a conversation that we haven't been able to have before, and that's really important. But there are other things going on within the regulation that is pretty blatant that the regulators don't understand what's happening. And again, that's why I'm doing this, right? I don't think that they're dumb people. I think they know the law, the old laws that they were raised on, that they were brought into office on. But this is a new world, and I think it's our job as technologists to help them understand it so that we can create regulation that doesn't stifle business, because none of us want that to happen, right? I do talk about regulation regularly, and I don't try to talk about regulation to shut down businesses. But there are simple things we can do that add safety to the consumers while still allowing us to innovate. And two, we have to consider that it's beyond just consumer innovation at this point, and we're talking, especially with some of these companies, national security. So we don't want to mess that up either. There's some really sensitive issues that I think just for, I guess, the general public, a lot of people don't understand this stuff. Their world feels like it's on fire, and they want a reaction now. They want service now, which they have a right to feel. But it's stuff that I think we need to come out as technologists to have these conversations with our communities to say, hey, look, you're right. It is scary, but here are the things we can do to actually help make it better and not harm our economy, not harm our national security. Yeah.
The horrible part is that's a really good answer. Now I just want to Snickers bar.
Yeah.
More questions. So I'm not saying that it will be an answer, but I'm asking what can be the actual solution for this? Is it like we have to stop doing that, or is there something that we can do to not be public? Because obviously, even I do it almost every day, and I just agree with the government. I didn't go through it at all, but now after all of this has happened, I still try to read through it and see if it's gonna get not trouble, but if they're gonna get the data that I don't want them to necessarily have. But then how do we go from protecting ourselves? Is it in their hands, or is it something that we can do?
That's a big question. Let me try to roll into a few things for that. Right now, the easiest thing I can give you is just be smart about what you put on the internet. That's not going to take you super far, but it is a good first step. The regulations are beginning to help. I think something, if you want to look into this, there are people who are starting to run some of their services on device as opposed to the cloud server, so your data doesn't get processed quite as much. You can look up privacy by design. Some of those motivations or movements are going to be big, I think, in the future. And I think what I'm trying to do is drive consumer demand, because I know from the inside that there's a lot of great people in these companies, but they don't have the budget to do the research that they need to do to prove that this stuff is an issue. So you need consumers to demand it at a certain point. So I'm trying to help drive consumer demand. Other things, I'm personally trying to push for regulation for some of this stuff. For example, I think instead of coming down and crunching on companies for doing bad, which is the traditional regulatory reaction, and actually tends to just harm small businesses more, you could consider something like a tax break for companies that want to focus on privacy and security practices. Maybe like Google or any of you who have companies want to allocate X amount of hours to improving your privacy and security standards. Or maybe you want to hire white hat hackers to come in and proactively hack at the system and make sure that it's safe. Or you want to run workshops with people that come in and make it a priority in your company culture. I think that stuff should be able to be tax write-offs the same way that building an eco-friendly building, which is best for society, gets a tax write-off. Other things that I've talked about is creating a data collection processing tax based on your relative market share. So the biggest companies, they can continue to acquire all the data they want. They can continue to just monopoly it up, but they're just going to have to pay a lot more money in taxes, which will incentivize them financially not to do that. It would incentivize them not to hold the data as long, because if you don't need it, why are you holding on to it? It would also force companies to figure out a way to create a legitimate revenue model beyond just attention or ad base, right? Or investment capital. I think it would create a lot more innovative startups actually, other than just like, yeah, let's find an ad model. So I have a lot of that stuff in my book. It's much more in depth than what I can tell you right now, but I guess it's a few thoughts. Yeah.
So I'm curious what you think about Amazon. You talked about it at the beginning, how they're automating, a lot of jobs are going away.
Yeah.
Why, do you think that's a bad thing? And why? Because in the end, aren't they making products, goods, and services cheaper for everybody? And in theory, those workers can do something else that then can contribute to making other things cheaper.
So I do believe that is the future. Yeah, I do believe it's a matter of economics. This stuff will happen. But I just want to put a thought in your mind. Imagine if a company created something that instantly like took your job away and said, we don't need you anymore. Now, how would that make you feel, right? I'm not saying that that should be corporate responsibility to go retrain all the people in the world, but to say, you know, all those people that are going to lose jobs, because it's going to be a lot of people in the next 10 to 30 years as the markets shift due to this automation. You're going to have a lot of people that lose their jobs, and I think the kids will be fine. That's my personal opinion. I think kids will be fine. They've grown up with this stuff. We're creating toys nowadays that, like, my Legos look like shame, right? But I think there's going to be an age group there where, like, they lose their job, they got to support a family, they got to do all things that we do as adults, and you're going to make them go back to college? Like, how are we going to deal with that? So I think that's just a bigger issue that we have to figure out as a society. I do believe it's a matter of economics. I do believe this stuff is the future, and I want to see it happen. But I also want to help us figure out how we bridge the gap, and how do we create jobs in the age of automation. What is blue-collar work in the future? Things like that. So I explore some of those topics as well and how we can help people bridge the gap. Yeah.
Can you describe the shift from cheap goods to
So I'm not sure it's quite as applicable to what he's asking, but there's also like the idea that we shift from, not completely, but in many ways, from a fiscal economy to an attention economy, right? We all kind of heard that phrase. What's happening there? You're creating businesses that are based on data, right? When we engage, that's attention, right? Attention paid to a device. We're creating data for them, which then trains their systems and ultimately drives their business, right? Tesla has a really great self-driving car at this point. You know, you can argue that, whatever, but like compared to things that are out there right now, it's pretty good. Tesla would not be nearly as efficient or as effective at what it does if it didn't have crowdsourced machine knowledge, right? If they had to have their 33,000 employees go out and train these cars, you know, individually, they wouldn't have all the abilities that they have now as a company with all of us driving cars, a lot of people driving cars for them, right? Same goes for Google, same goes for Amazon, same goes for all these companies. So effectively, by creating an attention economy, they've extracted the cash and turned it into data, which is actually all of us working for them. They've turned billions of people into unpaid laborers. And now they're creating an economy where more attention turns into more data, which then turns into cash. And if you think about the currency of attention, which is currently illegitimate, it's not only harming us psychologically and physically, but there's no price to it, right? There's not like gasoline is $2.75 a gallon. You're taking this illegitimate, corrupted currency, washing it through a legitimate business model of data brokering, product creation, and turning it into legitimate cash. And the way that model operates is not so different than like money laundering. I'm not trying to point a crime, but to say that we have a multi-trillion-dollar industry that's been created through several companies, many companies beyond just big tech, and it's operating in a way that is controlled by the people who own the data. I think the real revolution is figuring out how we put numbers to that data and begin to pay people for their work. Maybe at a certain point, then that money turns into the blue-collar job of the future. Yeah. So that's kind of like, again, that was a short version, but.
You have a question? One more question.
I think you might have answered this a little bit in your last answer here, but I noticed you didn't mention Apple, who also has a ton of data, but I believe they kind of position themselves more as more privacy focused. I'm wondering, do you think they actually walk the walk to work and other companies also, learn from or use that model?
So, this is maybe a cynical perspective on it, but I think like having been out there and seeing how these things are evolving, when did Apple really become the privacy first company? Maybe like the last year or two? I think what Apple is actually doing is they've realized they have no chance of competing in the data economy. They've always been a hardware company, not a software company. And they are now promoting that because they have no chance of surviving against these companies, especially Google, if they can't keep up. They can build pretty products all they want, but if they don't have the data to back it up, like I have Google, I have a Pixel 2. I'm not afraid, but like, they just can't keep up. They don't have the data. Look at Apple Maps versus Google Maps. That's the simplest I can show you. But like for real though, you zoom in on Google Maps, you got a 3D render of the world. You zoom on an Apple, and you might see the lines a little better. Like right, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, but they don't have the services, right? So it's just a strategic play. And I think that that's the thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm being cynical there, but it's my opinion. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Joe. All right, so we still have a bunch of beers. We still have the group. Hang out with us. Chat about your thoughts, your fears, your hopes.
Nice talk. That's good.
I actually think the other talk is more scary.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, maybe he mellowed it a bit for time. That's how it's less scary.
Maybe. Yeah.
I didn't see it.
Like in the beginning, especially how are we? So we're going. Especially how Amazon was set up.